Today's video will literally just highlight what's being indoctrinated into our kids in elementary school and how it will eventually affect the Black community. Y'all, let's talk about it.
Come on, Blaze.
It's a beef for me.
Wow, 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 wow. For your guy, for your B-O-Y. Drop it for your guy, for your B-O-Y. Do it for your guy, for your B-O-Y. Come on, baby, we live.
What's up, guys? It's your girl Voodoo Doll TV back with another video, and this is not going to be a quick joke, but it is a conversation that we need to have for amongst ourselves, especially the Black community. I just want you guys to know that there's a lot going on in our schools that you are not privy to because you probably don't get to ask those questions, or even if you do ask those questions, you may not get the answers that you really truly need. But ultimately, there's a problem in our community, Black people, especially Black women, and we need to talk about it. So first, I want to talk about how much we're entertained and how the government uses entertainment to basically blind us from what's really going on. So while we're worried about what's going on social media, we're worried about the celebrities, all the stuff that they have going on, pop culture news, we're worried about brunch on Sundays, we're worried about all these things that has no value to us. And the whole time our children are literally suffering. Now, let me just say this. I am by no means shaming anyone or telling anyone that basically they shouldn't be entertained by what's being put out there, because this is all a part of a governmental project to basically keep Black people down and ultimately remain ill-informed. When you look at the celebrities that we have in our community, you look at your Glorillas, you look at your Krishan Rocks, you look at your Sukianas, you look at all these other people who have been strategically placed in our faces and in our news feeds and in our social media feeds to distract us while they're doing all kinds of things in the background that will be detrimental not only to you but to the children and also to our futures. Now, when we get to talking about everything that's been going on in the world here lately, especially post the panorama, I don't like to use the real word because you know how that goes. I don't want to get flagged, but when you really sit down and think about it, you realize that we have been distracted. And distracted is maybe not even the best word. We have been blinded by the government. Everything that you see when you log into your phones, when it pertains to social media, is not by mistake. It is all by design. Many celebrities have come out and talked about how they've had to sell their souls. And we've never really gotten into what that actually means, but we kind of have a grand scheme of things of what that means. Let's listen to Sukiana as she speak about selling her soul when she first came into the industry.
I want to tell y'all I apologize and I'm sorry for what I'm about to say, but as far as this music stuff, I won't be doing this music stuff anymore. I started this because this was my dream, and I wanted to make sure I could get me and my kids out the hood. It's always been my passion to rap. A while ago, I had signed a contract and I didn't know nothing about the business or this game out here. And just right now, I'm realizing that I signed my soul. I sold my soul to the devil. I signed myself to the devil. I don't even own myself no more. I sold my soul to the motherfucking devil, and I done prayed. I prayed and I prayed and I prayed. And it's just like, I don't know if God can get me out of this, and it's just like to the point where I don't even know, like I can't. I just want to say I'm sorry to my fans. I know y'all love me. I know y'all believe in me, but I can't. I didn't know what I was doing back then, and I lost passion. I don't even believe that. I don't even believe in myself no more because of what I did. I did not know the game was like this. And I'm just ready to go back to school. I'm just ready to move away and go to school. I just want to tell everybody I'm sorry. And I won't be making any more music until I'm out of this contract, and who knows if that'll ever happen. Like, who knows if that can ever happen? I don't know. I done prayed and I prayed and I prayed. I don't even know if God can hear me at this point. But I just made the biggest mistake that I ever made.
So you guys heard what Sukiana was speaking about as far as selling her soul, but we never really get into the detail of what that is. And I believe, in my personal belief, that part of selling your soul includes you becoming a puppet for the United States government. Why do I say this? When you look at the amount of distractions that are out there for the Black community, it becomes overwhelming. Like, there's literally something every day when you log into Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Something is always going on in the Black community, not as much as the white community, the Asian community, or even the Hispanic community. But when it comes to the Black community, there's always a distraction. There's always a wow moment. There's always something going on to keep you and your heads in the social media and outside of what's going on. You get somebody like Suki Hana, who started off saying that she's so sorry she sold her soul into this is what we have now. Take a look.
Get my coochie stretched and eat a nigga ass. Eat a nigga ass. We be eating niggas ass today in London. Period, baby. I'm trying to get this coochie stretched.
Has anyone out there ever asked why such random things happen on social media and are put out there and blasted to the masses so that we can all have something to laugh and talk about? Has anyone ever thought about the things that we get in our feeds that basically distract us from real life and what's going on, like the surprising of cars, from Moneybag Yo to Glorilla, to all types of things that has nothing to do with us, no substance for us, but these things are just put out there for us to just take in and feed into so that we're distracted from what's actually going on in our government. I mean, you have random instances on social media where Cardi B gets a drink thrown on her and her hurling a mic at the patron in the audience, basically just causing a distraction and something more for us to speak about. I just want people out there to know that absolutely none of this is a coincidence. Every single thing that you see in the media has been strategically placed there to get your attention away from what's really going on in the world. And it has worked flawlessly in the past, and it is still working flawlessly. And we don't even understand what we're under when it comes to what's happening outside of what we're being entertained by. Again, I am by no means dragging anybody. I'm just trying to get us to understand what's actually been happening in the world. So let's get into that. So in case you guys don't know, there has been a huge outrage of parents versus the elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, the whole entire school system, and even college, about what's been indoctrinated or what's being indoctrinated into our children at a young age. There's a group of Muslim people out in California who are protesting, who are at all the town hall meetings because they're just now realizing the things that have been taught to their children and is being taught and indoctrinated into their children, and they refuse to let that be a thing. Let's take a listen to what's been going on down there.
Dearborn Schools is reviewing 6 library books, including This Book is Gay and All Boys Are Not Blue, after a parent complained about them, saying they were sexually explicit and inappropriate for kids.
A normal, psychologically sound and stable mind would come to a conclusion that that specific material is nothing but sexually explicit.
Those who disagree say this uproar is not about books at all.
So let's stop pretending this is about protecting children from books. We all know this is about erasing our LGBTQ students and staff. It was literally written on signs people brought to the meeting on Monday.
The pushback against the LGBTQ books has made unlikely bedfellows out of Muslims and some political conservatives.
So in case you're wondering what exactly are these parents in the uproar about, let's get into what they're teaching the children in those schools. One of the main lessons that are being taught is that dolls aren't just for girls and there are no boy colors or girl colors. Some lessons are direct, who can describe the transgender means. In other classes, the discussion is more subtle, like, remember, families can come in all shapes and sizes. Sometimes teachers simply shift their language to reflect the gender diversity that may be in the room. Instead of good morning, boys and girls, the teachers might say good morning, scholars. In Florida and several other states, educators are restricted in teaching about gender identity, but elsewhere, teachers are embracing the topic as the number of transgender and gender non-binary children rises. Resources and lessons planned for those who want to teach about gender identity are becoming more and more common. 7 states now require that curriculums include LGBTQ topics, and the National Sex Education Standard, developed by experts and advocacy groups, named gender identity as one of 7 essential topics alongside puberty, consent, sexual orientation, and other subjects. And the federal government recommends that schools include gender identity in their sexual education programs. There's years of research that demonstrate that curriculums that include respect for others regarding their sexual orientation and gender identity are more effective. This was said by Kathleen Ethier, who is the director of Division of Adolescents and School Health and Center for Disease Control and Prevention. That's true not just for LGBTQ students, she said. When you make a school environment safe and supportive for the most vulnerable youth, you improve the school environment for everyone. Now, opponents argue that teaching about gender identity is driven by liberal ideology and is inappropriate for children, especially young children. So 5 states, including Florida, basically ban or limit how teachers can talk about gender identity and sexual orientation. That's with at least 10 other states considering these measures. Books that feature transgender or non-binary characters have been subject to numerous ban attempts. The restriction often goes beyond the classroom. Many districts have resisted efforts to allow transgender students to use the bathroom that corresponds to their gender identity, and 18 states limit transgender women from competing in women and girls sports. Though some measures are on hold pending a court challenge, Philadelphia School District even came under fire for informing teachers about an independent trans wellness conference where some attendees discussed how to support youth who are transitioning. Classes that address gender identity are still the exception in American schools, but an increase in the number of youth people identifying as trans or gender non-conforming has prompted many schools to change course and adopt lessons that would have been non-thinkable a few years ago. A Gallup survey released last year, around 16% of young adults in Generation Z identify as LGBTQ. That's more than any other generation. The approach varies, particularly for elementary school children. In some classrooms, lessons about gender identity focus on gender stereotypes. Students in first grade, for instance, may be prompted to consider that there are no boy or girl colors. Some classes use the book I Am Jazz, and that's the story of the transgender girl that was on, TLC, I believe it was. But it basically says, I have a girl brain but a boy body. She says, this is called transgender. I was born this way. So this is basically where your kids are getting this idea that they should be something that they're not, because this is being indoctrinated into them. So now a lesson meant for first grade called Pink, Blue, and Purple comes from a curriculum called Rights, Respect, and Responsibility. And that's developed by an activist group that advocates for young students. And it tells the students that gender is not a fixed attribute. It basically says you might feel like you're a boy even if you have boy body parts. Then some people might tell you you are girl parts. The teachers are also told to say that. And it says that you might feel like a girl even though you have girl body parts. And then some people might tell you you are boy in parts. They also teach that you might not feel like a boy or a girl, but you're a little bit of both. And no matter how you feel, you're perfectly normal. Now, this lesson continues with students looking at various toys and assessing if each best fit suits boys or girls or anyone. Through discussion, the teacher helps students understand that all toys, dolls, drums, paints, and helicopters are for everyone and anyone. In a kindergarten classroom, one teacher in Western Massachusetts, using Right, Respect, and Responsibilities, introduces the idea of gender as part of an exploration of identity. He explains that people use all sorts of pronouns: he, she, they, and even they. He introduces the terms transgender and queer and genderqueer, but doesn't fully define them because that is too much for kindergartners, he said. He talks about the anatomy and the student's anatomy, but declines to classify various body parts as male or female. We don't say penis belongs to a man, he said. It belongs to a human, he explains. And he makes clear that even if a doctor proclaims at birth it's a boy, the baby may not be a boy. Someone who was raised a boy may not feel they are a boy. Similar lessons are offered in older grades in school, building sophistication as children get older. Others take a more moderate approach. There's a sexual educational teacher in Sacramento, California, who basically does not bring up the question of gender identity in her classes. And she teaches 5th and 6th grade. She said, but her pupils often ask about it and she will answer. Once, for instance, a student asked, can we stop our periods if we don't want them because we feel like a boy? So she explained how hormones work. Another curriculum called Health Smart explores the subject more directly in middle school, where body parts are presented in a gender-neutral way. It might refer to body parts with a penis, for instance, rather than speaking that boys have penises. People are referred to as partners, not boyfriends or girlfriends, and there's a real push to be inclusive of all students. In high school, some teachers are more direct, Sam Long, who is a transgender man who teaches biology at Denver South High School, said he regularly discusses gender identity in his class. LGBTQ identities are normal and occurring facet of human variation, and that is why we need to learn about them and in the context of biology and human anatomy. He also encourages students to consider that a gender on a spectrum is an alternative to thinking of gender as binary. If you guys aren't familiar with binary, that just means two, which is male or female. They're basically trying to say that gender is not a binary, it's non-binary, meaning it's a spectrum. It could be this, it could be that, it could be a whole other host of things, but it's not just as simple as male and female. We have to be mindful that all schools aren't adopting this, but some are. And a lot of them are adopting this thing because basically they get funding. There's a lot of the way the government works. The government will cut funding from a school if they don't teach the curriculum that the federal government wants them to teach, which is why Joe Biden is pushing for all these bills, all these anti-this, anti-that, for the LGBTQ plus community, and also in particular for the children. So if schools and states decide not to teach the curriculum that's being pushed by the federal government, basically the states will basically lose funding. And most of the time states don't want to lose funding. And we see this a lot when we talk about Governor DeSantis. Now, I'm not a fan of Governor DeSantis. I really don't know the man. I really don't care about the man. However, I kind of went to digging into some research as to what he was doing and why he was doing what he was doing. As it pertains to what he's been doing as far as LGBTQ plus IA in Florida, he's basically banning the curriculum to teach this stuff to the children, and basically says that this should go into the hands of the parents and not into the hands of the schools. Let's take a look at Ron DeSantis' bills that he's been passing, and I'll come back for some more commentary.
On Black history, what's one of the lessons about? Queer theory. Now, who would say that an important part of Black history is queer theory? That is somebody pushing an agenda on our kids. And so when you look to see they have stuff about intersectionality, abolishing prisons, that's a political agenda. And so that's the wrong side of the line for Florida standards. We believe in teaching kids facts and how to think, but we don't believe they should have an agenda imposed on them. When you try to use Black history to shoehorn in queer theory, you are clearly trying to use that for political purposes.
Now, you guys just heard Governor DeSantis on why he took out the Black history itinerary or agenda in Florida schools. I know that everybody was in an uproar about that. I spoke on this on a couple of my other videos, but I kind of wanted to add that in so you guys can get his perspective. Now, I'm not endorsing Ron DeSantis. I don't even live in Florida, so I really don't care. But I do want us to start taking deeper dives into what's going on and why it's happening. We were fooled to believe that he was taking out Black history to be racist. When Laverne Cox made mention that, queer authors are being banned, this is what she was talking about. And it was simply because basically they're putting in queer ideology and queer indoctrination into our books and then basically passing it off as Black history. And that's one of the things that's been going on. There are many curriculums that have been overtaken by the LGBTQ plus agenda, and they're being pushed through our students and through our children. This is very, very, very problematic because everything that has happened through history has happened through children. If this ideology is pushed through children, even though we've seen that the numbers of children who are identifying as something other than what they are and or non-binary, then we're going to develop a generation of children and who will grow up to be adults who will literally just become confused, and that in turn will have a population issue. We all know that Bill Gates has an issue with population control, which is why the vaccine and all these other things through the panorama was distributed to us, because he believes that there are too many people on earth. I believe that this is one of the agendas they are using to push through our children because they know us as adults, we won't go. Typically, that's normally what happens, which is why you hear a lot of parents who have pushed back on the things that's been going on, because they're basically taking away the rights for parents to be in control of what happens and what's being taught and pushed to their children. Parents right now no longer has the right to say, I don't want my children to take hormone drugs. I don't want them to take puberty blockers. I don't want my child to transition. I don't want my child to have any type of medical attention without my knowledge. We are slowly losing the rights response to all of those things as we speak, because we're so busy as Black people being entertained and we're not paying attention to what's been going on in society. I was having a conversation with one of my homegirls, and she was telling me that her sister's nephew, his dad had basically recently found out the curriculum that was being taught to his child in school, and he was in an outrage because he did not know that his child was being taught about basically gender identity and sexuality in such a young age. Keep in mind, his child is in elementary school. He went down to the school, had a big issue about it, and nothing was done about it because the state basically was funded by the federal government to teach such ideology. It's not just him, and there's a lot of other parents out there. I spoke on this before about the Muslim parents who basically went down there and was fighting for everything because they did not appreciate the government putting this ideology on their children, especially knowing how religious and how straightforward Muslim people are. They did not appreciate that, and they are still in an ongoing fight to this day to basically get that taken care of and out of their children's curriculum. Let's take a look at what some of the parents had to say at a recent protest on why they're there, and then we're going to look at what the opposing person has to say about the parents being there to oppose their right to basically teach children a harmful indoctrination that could basically confuse them. Let's take a look.
Yourself?
Hi, I'm Christine. I'm a mom here at the school. I have a 7-year-old.
So why are you here today?
We're here because the school planned on having an assembly to talk to our kids about matters that we think that the kids are too young to talk about just yet. And we planned a walkout today, and none of our kids are here for that assembly today.
And why is it bad for these children to be exposed to this sort of ideology?
Well, because they're too young to talk about sex, and you can't talk about same-sex families and couples and relations without talking about sex. We just don't think that 7-year-olds are ready to have those discussions yet. We think that 7-year-olds, or even up to the 5th grade, they're here to learn and they're here to play, and they're not here to be sexualized and talk about topics that are beyond them right now.
Now, what would you say to the people that would say that this is probably, or that you hate gays or hate people that are part of the LGBTQ community?
Right, I hear them screaming no more hate. We have not hated anyone. We have been in this community for years. The rainbow flag has been in the school for years. The transsexual teacher has been at the school for years. There have been no incidents, no hate. We also are not protesting them. We're protesting the LAUSD and the school for talking to our kids about a topic that we think parents should talk to their kids about. So there's no hate against anyone. We love them just as much as they
parental rights or strip them all together.
That's not right. That's not America. Parents should have rights to raise their children in the values they believe in their value. Parents should not be neglected from their parenting rights. This is the First Amendment and the 14th Amendment rights. Parents have the rights as a believer, Christian, Muslim, any believer, to live according to their beliefs and to also raise their children according to their beliefs. And indoctrinating the children, guiding the children in different direction, it confuses children, number one. And number two, it's gonna give the information, it's gonna give the concepts that children can change gender, and this is.
But what about their Muslim children? If they don't want them learning about transgenderism, learning about something like that at such a young age?
Learning about people in the United States? I think if their religion excludes the existence of a people, then they need to find another educational opportunity for their children.
Even though this is a public school district?
That's exactly my point.
I mean, they're taxpayers, they're paying for these teachers to teach their children. Don't you believe they have parental rights to be able to dictate their education for their children?
No, not to this degree. It's the public's choice of what is appropriate for public education, not certain families. Everyone decides together.
Now, you guys just heard that response or that interview from this parent who was basically concerned that her child is being indoctrinated with something that she basically would not speak to her children about. And we're talking about kids in the grades as low as kindergarten all the way up to high school. So it's not like it's a thing where they're only doing it for middle school or high school. It's a progressive thing. And it starts at kindergarten, where they kind of give you a broad stroke of everything. And it's defined as far as you go in high school and middle school and so on and so so forth. This is extremely dangerous, and I believe that we need to be on point and on code as it pertains to these issues, because these issues right now in the media looks as if they're only affecting people of other colors instead of us. But what we do not realize is that it is affecting us. It's just that we're not in an uproar because we're too busy being entertained. We don't even know what's actually going on. You guys have to think about everything as far as future. I want my people to have more forethought, because I know as a people, we typically don't have that. As a people, we have zero forethought. We live for the weekend and we live for the day. Again, I'm not bashing, because I'm one of those people who used to live like that. But now, as I've come into some wisdom and knowledge and consciousness, I'm starting to realize that we're living in a matrix, and this matrix will literally eat us alive. As Black people, we need as much attention and as much help as we can get. Yet you got people like President Biden, who's literally skipping over us when it comes to protections, when it comes to everything that we need as a community, and he's going straight forward into this LGBTQ plus drive that's basically nothing to do with us. And that's another thing I wanted to touch on, but I'll leave that for a little bit later. But what we have to understand when we're having issues with the trans community as far as Black people, and also with the queer community and everybody else, we have to understand as Black people that basically we're all at the bottom of the totem pole. Black women single-handedly voted President Biden into office just off of the strength of having a so-called Black vice president in Kamala Harris. I remember everybody was down there in their chucks and pearls, and everybody was having a great time, feeling great. And we realized that once she was into office, we realized she was not an American Black woman. She is an Indian woman. An Indian woman who, mind you, once she got into office, said that she has nothing and will do nothing specifically for Black people. Now, why is this important when it comes to our children? Our children are being directly affected on a state level because of federal laws that have been passed. President Joe Biden have passed many laws, especially when he gave his speech during the White House press conference when he had the Pride Month over there at the White House. It was, according to his words, the biggest Pride celebration ever done at the White House. And it was basically for him talking about how he's there to make sure children are basically heard, they are loved, and know that they are one, and that he's going to make sure that they have gender affirming care and that they can grow old to be natural citizens and live a long and healthy life. What baffled me the most about this speech is I'm sitting here saying we single-handedly vote these people into office, and they're basically not only not doing anything for us as a people, they are literally attacking our children. So what do we get for our vote? And again, this isn't a political thing. It's just that politics is involved when it comes with our children. So we have to be mindful of what's been going on. Let's take a listen to some of what Joe Biden had to say during his speech down there at the Pride event.
Too many people in the LGBT community are worried and afraid about their future and their safety. So today, I want to send a message to the entire community, especially to transgender children. You are loved. You are heard. You are understood. And you belong.
So as you just heard, President Biden addressing the children through LGBTQ plus rights and activists. But this is the thing. This is what I want my LGBTQ people to understand that are in the Black community. I get that we are having a divide right now, but you guys are not included in this. Honestly, it's just going to affect us the worst as far as the things that he's passing, but we're not included in this, and neither are you. I want us to be smart and be mindful that when we go against each other, as far as this trans woman versus real woman thing down in our community, we are literally feeding into the BS that they want. And I want us to know that there's a place for each and every one of us, but fighting and trying to intrude on other people's spaces is not the way to go. There's space and opportunity out here for everybody, but I do not want us to feel like we have to go against each other simply because we are trying to exist. Everybody's trying to exist. But when it comes to the children, our children are going to be affected the most, because I played a video before where they say they're going to implement this on street children first, meaning more than anybody. And that means our children, which are Black children, will be affected. We are already without the resources in our communities to help our children with what they're suffering through now when it comes to drill rap, when it comes to young adults and young children with weapons, when it comes to the amount of unaliving in our neighborhoods and in our communities, we are so unequipped for what's coming down the pipeline. And I feel like us being unequipped is the reason why we're targeted the most. We need to get out there and basically fight for our children, because the politicians that we have chosen, and I'm saying we because I'm Black, but I did not vote. I'll say this: the politicians we have chosen are now attacking our children. And if they're going to attack our children, that means a lot for our race. That means that through the children, they will basically tear us down as a community. They will tear us down as a people. They will tear us down as not even existing in the history books, because we will be an afterthought. They have been trying to destroy us from the beginning of time, and sometimes they have come successful, but for the most part, we have been able to beat it. I believe that this attack on our children will be the detriment of the community. We have to stand up. At this point, we absolutely have to stand up, just the way the Muslim parents are, just the way everybody else are doing. We have to stand up, because it's all fun and games right now, and everybody's all inclusive until it's too late. Like, what do we do when it's too late? What do we do when our population starts to decline? What do we do when our birth rate starts to decline? What do we do when all of these things start to happen and we don't understand why? Now, I've always been taught to present a problem, but don't present a problem if you don't have a solution. I would say my solution, or not even a solution, but my thoughts on what we can do will be at voting. We cannot be emotional when it comes to voting, because remember, all of this is coming down from the federal government, signed by Joe Biden, and basically ignoring us as Black people. Not only him, but Kamala Harris is ignoring everyone too. Do y'all remember when she basically was asked right after she got out of her, right after they ran for presidency and they won the presidency, she sat down with Charlemagne the God, and he was kind of asking her, who's running the country? Is it him or Joe Manchin? And she kind of got like real nasty with him about that. Do y'all remember that? If you haven't seen that clip, let me just let y'all see it.
So who's the real president of this country? Is it Joe Manchin or Joe Biden, Madam Vice President?
Come on, Charlemagne.
Come
on. It's Joe Biden.
I can't tell sometimes.
No. It's Joe Biden. It's Joe Biden. And don't start talking like a Republican about asking whether or not he's president. It's Joe Biden.
Do you think Joe Manchin is a problem?
It's Joe Biden, and I'm vice president, and my name is Kamala Harris.
Now, you guys just saw her response and how she got a horrible attitude with Charlemagne, because he was basically trying to see who's running the country. And she said it's him and it's her. So if that means that they're running the country, then that means the things that we're going through in our schools is basically because of them. It's all their fault. This is an admission of your vice president. You know what I mean? I don't know if y'all also remember, there was another interview she sat down with when they were talking about reparations, or her even doing anything for Black people. Kamala Harris did this interview with this young lady, and the young lady was asking her what she thought about doing something for specifically Black people, and if there would be any bills or any rights that would be passed for Black people. Now, a bill or a right that would be passed for Black people, as we all know, is anti-policing. It's a whole bunch of other things that we need as far as our welfare system, as far as jobs. There's a whole list and slew of things that we need as Black people. But Vice President Kamala Harris said she will never basically pass anything specific for Black people. And why is that important? Typical street schools are your urban areas, which are filled with Black people. So when our government is basically telling us they're going to target our government, or target our schools, with this rhetoric for our children in the street schools, then that directly affects our children. And things that directly affect our children directly affect us. Let me let y'all listen to this interview she did where she was explaining what she'll do for everybody except for us. Let's take a listen.
Do you support reparations for Black people?
Well, listen, again, we had over 200 years of slavery. We had Jim Crow for almost a century. We had legalized discrimination, segregation, and now we have segregation and discrimination that is not legal but still exists and is a barrier to progress. We have disparities around housing. We have disparities around education. We have disparities around income. And we have to recognize that everybody did not start out on an equal footing in this country. And in particular, Black people have not. And so we have got to recognize that and do something about that and give folks a lift up. That's why, for example, I'm proposing the LIFT Act. Give people who are making $100,000 or less as a family a tax credit. which will benefit and uplift 60% of black families who are in poverty.
So by default, it affects black families, but there's not a particular policy for African Americans that you would explore.
But no, if you look at the reality of who will benefit from certain policies, when you take into account that they're not starting at the same place and they're not starting on equal footing, it will directly benefit black children, black families, black homeowners, because the disparities are so significant. So if we focus on the specific issues that have resulted in the greatest disparities, and we understand that that's part of why we're doing it. Listen, the reality also is this: any policy that will benefit black people will benefit all of society. Let's be clear about that. Let's really be clear about that. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit black people. No, because whatever benefits that black family will benefit that community and society as a whole and the country, right?
So now you heard what Kamala Harris said in regards to what she'll do for specifically black people, and the answer is nothing. Why is this important when we're talking about children? Like I said before, the federal government directly funds our schools, and if it directly funds our schools and our states and our schools won't stand up and get their funds cut because they see that they don't want to feed this rhetoric to our children and indoctrinate our children, then basically we're going to be subjected to our children being fed this indoctrination about this gender identity thing. And also a reason that the gender identity rates are rising is because they are putting this into the children's mind. If you put something into children's mind, just like any other situation, they're going to eat it up like a sponge, because that's what children do. In my opinion, the reason these numbers have risen the way that they've risen is because our children are being indoctrinated from kindergarten all the way up through college, not just high school, college. I've shown other videos showing college students basically having debates and having conversations with other people regarding gender identity, and they are so brainwashed, it is ridiculous. I applaud the Muslim parents who got out there and who protest and basically said, hey, you will not teach this to our children. They pulled their children out of schools. They basically had their children out there marching for what they believe in. And again, I'm not saying that the LGBTQ plus movement can't have their agenda, but what I'm saying is it is not okay to enforce that on children. It's just not. It is not okay to enforce your sex or your gender identities or your gender ideologies onto children. You know, I was also thinking about this. When we start thinking about how stuff gets put into the black community as far as us being comfortable with things, I think about, like I said, celebrities. One celebrity that I thought about was Dwyane Wade. Do y'all remember when Dwyane Wade first came out with Zaya Wade, saying that Zaya Wade was going to transition, and they brought Zaya out to the universe and to the world and said how proud they were of her? And a lot of black people had thoughts about this, Boosie being one of them, which he has thoughts about a lot of things. But a lot of people had some things to say when they realized that basically Dwyane Wade was using his daughter, for propaganda. If it's one thing for her to feel like she wants to transition and, hey, this is what I want to do, but it's another thing to parade your child in front of the media. And literally that's what he did. He paraded his child in front of the media to get not only black people, but the world at large comfortable with the idea that, hey, your child may want to come to you and transition. Now, I don't know if you guys remember, this had happened, I want to say he first transitioned or came out with his transition, I want to say either right around the panorama, please don't quote me, but when that came out, that basically kind of was laying the foundation for everybody to be okay for what's happening in our schools right now. What's happening in our schools right now is what Dwyane Wade, as a puppet, was sent here to put in our brains, that basically it's okay for your child to want to transition at an early age. You guys, we are in a lot of trouble. We are in a lot of trouble, and we don't realize it until it's too late as a people. That's typical of us and who we are. We have to stop looking up to these celebrities. We have to stop even paying so much attention to them. I'm not saying don't pay attention to them at all, but we have to take what they're saying and doing it for a grain of salt. And we also have to pay attention to our children. I've said this before in another video. My child is grown. I could have taken the approach of, hey, I don't give a damn about what y'all do with y'all kids. My child is grown. But I chose to realize that, hey, as a community, we need to be able to stick together. As a community, we need to be able to exist. As a community, we need to come together like these people and fight for our rights with our children. It's gonna be a point in time, if it's not already, where it's too late, and I really want us to figure this part out. Again, this all came from the rant that Laverne Cox gave, where she's talking about how queer authors are being banned, and it just made me wanted to do a deeper dive into what we've been listening to and what we've been dealing with, and we are not even noticing it because we're too busy as Black people being entertained. You guys, let me know what y'all think about this. I know it's probably a lot, and if it's all over the place, I apologize. I had so many thoughts and so many things to get off of my head. It just came out however it came out, so please forgive me. Y'all jump in the comments and let me know what y'all think about what's going on in our schools and what we can do to basically start to combat that and basically move forward. Y'all, please don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, follow me on TikTok, and I'll see y'all later. Bye.
Mr. Carroll, how you give the voodoo doll time to talk? I don't get no fucking time to talk.
Who the voodoo doll is?
The nigga you just had up here.